Arcadian eon was 4.54 billion to 4 billion years ago. During this eon, the Earth's surface was made up of asteroids and molten rock. The two biggest events of this eon would be the formation of our Earth and solar system and the creation of the Moon from a celestial body the size of Mars colliding into Earth. The Archean eon was 4 billion to 2.5 billion years ago. This eon represents the beginning of many things, the most important of which being the beginning of life with the formation of single-celled organisms. Within the Archean eon are 4 eras, the first of which being the Eoarchean era was from 4 billion to 3.6 million years ago. This era is known for the emergence of oceans on Earth as well as heavy asteroid bombardment. This is the first time in which the Earth's crust is mostly solid. The oldest known Earth rocks are found in this era. The Paleoarchean era was from 3.6 billion to 3.2 billion years ago. This era has the earliest evidence of life in the form of bacteria in the ocean. The geological record is limited, but a few intact formations are discovered in this era. The Mesoarchean era was from 3.2 billion to 2.8 billion years ago. This era is known for expansion of life through bacteria, the Pongola glaciation, which occurred during this era from the evolution of atmospheric photosynthesis, and the production of oxygen gas from cyanobacteria. But oxygen gas would not accumulate into the atmosphere until the Neoarchean era was from 2.8 billion to 2.5 billion years ago. With the increase of oxygen in the atmosphere, complex life further develops. The supercontinent, Kennerland, is formed. This brings us to the next eon. The Proterozoic eon was 2.5 billion to 541 million years ago. This eon is when plate tectonics become active and the supercontinents are broken apart. This is also when many ice ages occur and oxygen becomes a major part of Earth's atmosphere. The Paleoproterozoic era was from 2.5 billion to 1.6 billion years ago. In this era, the surge in oxygen levels in the atmosphere causes the Great Oxidation Event. This was an extinction event that killed most of the anaerobic organisms in the ocean. This is considered one of the first extinction events on Earth. The Mesoproterozoic era is from 1.6 billion to 1 billion years ago. In this era, major tectonic events occur that split apart the supercontinent of Columbia, in turn creating the supercontinent of Rodinia. Sexual reproduction was developed in this era, marking the start of the creation of multicellular organisms. The Neoproterozoic era is from 1 billion years ago to 538.8 million years ago. This era holds the most severe glacial event, which possibly covered the entire Earth in ice. Also, the earliest fossils of complex multicellular life are found in this era. The most continental crust is produced in this era. The Phanerozoic eon is from 541 million years ago to present day. It covers the majority of the developments and evolutions of life on Earth, from hard-shelled creatures, the first life on land, the dinosaurs, and the development of us humans. Obviously, the best records of Earth's history exist in this eon, and it starts with the Paleozoic era is from 541 million to 252 million years ago. Paleozoic translates from Greek to ancient life. The era begins with the Cambrian explosion, includes animal species evolving to live on land, and ends with the Permian extinction. The Cambrian period was from 541 million to 485.4 million years ago. This period saw an explosion of life forms that are on record, described as a sharp increase in the rate of evolution. This is the time when many kinds of invertebrates, and the first vertebrates, fishes, appeared on the fossil record. The Burgess Shale contains the best record of Cambrian animal fossils, including soft-bodied forms. The Ordovician period is from 485.4 million to 443.8 million years ago. During this period, life continued to grow rapidly, and there is the formation of the supercontinent of Gondwana. The rocks formed during this period make up the mountain of Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world. The Silurian period is from 443.8 million to 419.2 million years ago. This period includes evolution in sea creatures with the first ever freshwater fish. There is also a big rise in sea levels. Coral reefs and vascular plants flourished at this time. The first plants to be on land are found at this time in the form of moss along lakes. The Devonian period is from 419.2 million to 358.9 million years ago. During this period, 85% of the world was covered by ocean water. Fish life flourished in this period, and evidence of four-legged fish is found. The late Devonian extinction occurs and kills all trilobites. North America, Greenland, and Europe were united into a single northern hemisphere landmass, a minor supercontinent called Euramerica. The first evidence of seeded plants and trees dates to this period. The Mississippian period is from 358.9 million to 323.2 million years ago. This period is sometimes called the Age of Crinoids because the fossils of these invertebrates are major components of much Mississippian age limestone. The early Mississippian saw the Earth in a greenhouse climate state with warm temperatures over much of the globe. Gondwana continued its northwest drift and collision with Euramerica, building the Appalachian Mountains. Reptiles also began migrating on land. The Pennsylvanian period is from 323.2 million to 298.9 million years ago. Terrestrial plants and animals had advanced to the point where true forests were developed in lowland, coastal sites. Equatorial regions saw thriving swamps, and the climate generally fluctuated between glacial phases and increased warming and drying. The Permian period is from 298.9 million to 252.2 million years ago. Terrestrial plants broadly diversified during the Permian period, and insects evolved rapidly as they followed the plants into new habitats. The first evidence of reptiles that would go on to evolve into the mammals of the Mesozoic era are in this period. The last period of the Paleozoic era saw the formation of Pangaea, the supercontinent that included most of Earth's land area. At the end of this period, the Permian extinction occurs from global warming, the biggest mass extinction event ever, leaving only 10% of species alive by the end of the Paleozoic era. The Mesozoic era was from 252.2 million to 66 million years ago. This era is best known as the time of the dinosaurs. Mesozoic was a time of geologic and biological transition. During this era, the continents began to move into their present-day configurations. A distinct modernization of life forms occurred, partly because of the demise of many earlier types of organisms. 3 of the 5 largest mass extinctions in Earth history are associated with the Mesozoic era. The Triassic period is from 252.2 million to 201 million years ago. During the recovery of life in the Triassic period, the relative importance of land animals grew. Reptiles increased in diversity and number, and the first dinosaurs appeared. A massive amount of ammonoids and primitive mollusks would die off from another, relatively smaller extinction event. The Jurassic period is from 201 million to 145 million years ago. During this period, the supercontinent Pangaea split apart, allowing for the eventual development of what are now the Central Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. On land, dinosaurs and flying pterosaurs dominated the ecosystems, and birds made their first appearance. Early mammals were also present, though they were fairly insignificant. Insect populations were diverse, and plants were dominated by the gymnosperms. The Cretaceous period is from 145 million to 66 million years ago. The Cretaceous period began with the Earth's land assembled essentially into 2 continents, Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south. Dinosaurs were the dominant group of land animals, especially duck-billed dinosaurs, hadrosaurs, and horned forms such as Triceratops. The sea levels during this period would be at the highest point that they would ever be, hundreds of meters higher than present day. The Cretaceous ended with one of the greatest mass extinctions in the history of Earth, exterminating the dinosaurs, marine and flying reptiles, and many marine invertebrates, 80% of animal species living at the time. The Cenozoic era is from 66 million years ago to the present day. This is a time of resetting from the mass extinction event of the Cretaceous period. The continental crust sets into what we know our Earth to look like today, and Earth's plant and animal life begins evolving into the species we are familiar with. Even many mountain ranges we see today were formed in this era. The Tertiary period is from 66 million to 2.6 million years ago. This period began with a warm climate with high sea levels after the mass extinction event of the Cretaceous period. The end of the Tertiary period is characterized by the growth of glaciers in the northern hemisphere and the emergence of primates that later gave rise to modern humans. The Paleogene subperiod is from 66 million to 23.03 million years ago. During the Paleogene subperiod, Pangaea continued to break up, and India and Africa slammed into the southern part of Eurasia to uplift the Himalayas and Alps. This subperiod saw a general explosion in terms of the diversification of land and sea species. The Paleocene epoch is from 66 million to 56 million years ago. The climate of North America during the Paleocene epoch was characterized by a general warming trend with little to no frost. Primates became more abundant in the Middle Paleocene. They displayed characteristics intermediate between the insectivores and the lemurs, especially in their dental anatomy. Late in the Paleocene, mammalian evolution showed a trend toward larger forms and more varied assemblages. The Eocene epoch is from 56 million to 33.9 million years ago. The start of the Eocene is marked by the appearance of 2 new groups of animals, the Perissodactyls, horses, rhinoceroses, and tapirs, and the Artiodactyls, deer, cattle, and sheep. The Eocene epoch marks the first appearance in the fossil record of the 2 completely marine mammal groups, the cetaceans, whales, porpoises, and dolphins, and the sirenians, akin to the modern manatee. Similarly, the Eocene provides the first elephant-like animals and the early bats. The Oligocene epoch is from 33.9 million to 23 million years ago. The Oligocene climates appear to have been temperate, and many regions enjoyed subtropical climate conditions. Grasslands expanded and forested regions dwindled during this time, while tropical vegetation flourished along the border of the Tethyan Sea. Terrestrial invertebrate life was abundant and diverse. Stream and lake deposits on the Isle of Wight in England contain the remains, often well preserved, of termites and other insects. In the Baltic, many forms of Oligocene insects, including butterflies, bees, ants, and spiders, are preserved in amber. The Neogene subperiod was from 23 million to 2.6 million years ago. The Neogene period started with the replacement of vast areas of forest by grasslands and savannas. New food sources and niches fostered further evolution of mammals and birds. During the Neogene period, the polar ice thickened and took up more space in the ocean. All this ice caused sea levels to drop even further. The drop in sea levels opened up land bridges between continents. The Miocene epoch is from 23 million to 5.3 million years ago. Half of the mammalian families known today are present in the Miocene record. By the end of the Miocene epoch, almost all of the modern groups of whales had appeared, as had the early seals and walruses. Birds such as herons, rails, ducks, eagles, hawks, crows, sparrows, pheasants, owls, and partridges were present in Europe. Elsewhere, the higher primates, especially the apes, underwent a great deal of evolution. The fossil evidence seems to indicate that advanced primates, including apes, were present in southern Europe. The Pliocene epoch is from 5.3 million to 2.6 million years ago. During this epoch, we see the development of ice caps, the drying of the Mediterranean, and the joining of the Americas. This led to a migration of armadillo, ground sloth, opossum, and porcupines from South to North America, and an invasion of dogs, cats, bears, and horses in the opposite direction. The Quaternary period is from 2.6 million years ago to present day. This period is where the Ice Age cycle emerges, when ice sheets many kilometers thick have covered vast areas of the continents in temperate areas. During and between these glacial periods, rapid changes in climate and sea level have occurred, and environments worldwide have been altered. These variations, in turn, have driven rapid changes in life forms, both flora and fauna. Beginning some 200,000 years ago, they were responsible for the rise of humans. The Pleistocene epoch was from 2.6 million to 11,700 years ago. The modern continents were essentially at their present positions during the Pleistocene, the plates upon which they sit probably having moved no more than 62 miles relative to each other since the beginning of the period. In glacial periods, the sea level would drop by over 300 feet during peak glaciation, exposing large areas of present continental shelf as dry land. Both marine and continental faunas were essentially modern, but with many more large land mammals such as mammoths, mastodons, short-faced bears, and giant sloths. According to mitochondrial timing techniques, modern humans migrated from Africa after the Riss glaciation in the middle of the Paleolithic during the Eemian stage, spreading all over the ice-free world during the late Pleistocene. The Holocene epoch was from 11,700 years ago to present day. The last cold episode of the last glacial period ended about 10,000 years ago. Besides the Little Ice Age between about 1,200 and 1,700 AD, The Holocene has been a relatively warm period in between ice ages. The Holocene epoch is the age of man. The biggest environmental influence during this epoch has been us humans. Through our technological developments, this has led us to both incredible achievements and disastrous consequences when it comes to the environment of the Earth. Thanks for watching.